So in terms of what the actual Create Transport Disruptions Data service is, it's a service built for local authorities and operators within England to create and publicize and kind of manage their disruptions information. So it supports disruptions data for all four modes of transport, so bus, light rail, ferry, and tram services. It's free to use and open source, and it kind of leverages a bunch of different data sources, so BODS, NAPTAN, Street Manager, etc., and that allows us to create an intuitive experience for the users. And it supports a fourth data type on BODS, so similar to the way that timetables, fares, and AVL location currently sits on BODS. This is a fourth data type available on BODS. And the data is exported in SX format, so you can access that data in the same way you would the other data types on BODS. So earlier in 2024, we did a survey trying to understand kind of the approach that different local authorities and operators within England have to disruptions data. And kind of a summary of the things we found was that it's a very manual process. So there's a lot of paperwork, emails between the local authority and operators regarding maybe a bus breakdown or road closures, etc. And it's a very fragmented approach. So there's a lack of cooperation between LTAs and operators on the kind of information that's going out to the public. Again, duplication of effort. So for example, if you're sharing that information across multiple platforms, whether you're publicizing that information on your local authority website and then having to go into your social media accounts, etc., it takes double the amount of effort that it should. And there's a lack of standardization. So it's not the same quality of information that's going out in each of the disruptions messaging that's going out to the public. So in terms of the current features that are included in the tool, there's the ability to integrate your social media accounts so that when you're using the tool to create the disruptions data, you can simultaneously create a social media post so that when you publicize that disruptions data, that social media post goes out at the correct time onto your social media platforms. And so currently we have the ability to support social media posts to Twitter, Hootsuite, and Nextdoor. Second, there's a mapping visualization. So there's an interactive mapping function on the tool that allows you to kind of map out the stops and services that are impacted by the disruption. Third, there's multiple account levels. So because this is built to be local authority led, we would grant the local authority admin access to that local authority's area, admin area, and then they can decide what level of accounts they want to grant. So there's 4 different account types, and there is a dedicated operator account. So operators can go in and create disruptions for their own specific organization or service-wide or operator-wide disruptions. But again, that would have to be granted. You would have to be granted by your local authority to join their account, essentially. And then finally, integration with Street Manager. So that just speeds up the way that you're able to create disruptions for roadworks because it pulls in the data from the Street Manager database. And so quickly, just to run through some of the benefits of using the tool. So it's a single source of truth because we're aiming for nationwide coverage, that will allow a single source of truth for disruptions data across England. Second, it streamlines your approach. So it replaces the previously mentioned fragmented, localized approach to disruptions and allows like a nationwide standardized approach to disruptions data. It supports your existing processes. So if you're somebody or a local authority or operator that publishes to a specific website or social media accounts already, this kind of just supports that process. So you have one source of disruptions data that can be directly accessed to then feed into your operation. So for example, Transport for Greater Manchester currently uses the disruptions tool. And so they create their disruptions data using the service, and then they directly access the SX feed, API feed to power their local authority website. And similarly, you could use the SiriusX feed to, for example, put disruptions on your RTI boards, etc. And then last, it supports app developers. So app developers such as CityMapper use the disruptions information to support disruptions messaging that they provide to the passengers and users of their apps. So I'll move on to a demo of the tool, but I'll stop there quickly for any questions anyone might have. Nope, okay. So this is going to be just a quick demo of the tool. There is a much more detailed demo that's on YouTube already, but because of time restraints, I'll just go through one example of a disruption. So this is kind of, well, firstly, I'm on the pre-prod site. So this isn't the live website, but this is the dashboard. And this kind of shows you any live disruptions that your local authority has currently, any upcoming ones, and then any recently closed ones. So if you were to click the view all disruptions, this shows you a view of all the disruptions in your account. That can be ones that are recently closed, draft ones, currently live ones, upcoming ones, etc. And you have the option of exporting those and as a CSV, PDF, or Excel file. So firstly, the thing I'll go through is creating disruptions from roadworks in your area. As mentioned, this pulls in Street Manager database, so that's kind of a national database of all roadworks within England, and it's set to your admin area. So mine's currently set to the West Midlands, I believe. So these are kind of all of the roadworks that are currently active within the West Midlands. So I can select a roadwork, for example, Bath Row, and that kind of pre-populates some of the information that I would normally manually have to enter. So I think some of these fields are mandatory, but you can see it's pre-populated the dates, etc. And then all I would have to do is save and continue, and then go into the second part of the disruption, which is adding the consequences. So there's 4 types of consequences that you can add to a disruption. I'm not going to do that for this tutorial. I'll create one from scratch to show you the full process of creating a disruption. So if you click create new disruption, you can decide whether a disruption is planned or unplanned. So I'll go with planned, and I'll say roadworks on road A. And the description is a mandatory field. That's just adding extra information that you might have about the disruption. I'm just going to copy across for now. The associated link is an optional field. Some people decide to put, for example, their local authority website or a link to their one network, etc. Reason for disruptions is a set list of reasons. This should cover all kind of reasons for a disruption. I'm just going to go for roadworks. Then this section is describing when the disruption is taking place. So the start date and time is when the disruption is live. So you could either decide to put now and no end date if it's an unplanned disruption and you're not sure when it will end. Or you could decide to, if you know ahead of schedule, for example, like roadworks, you'll probably know weeks or months ahead. You can repopulate that. So I'm going to say it's happening on it's a week-long disruption. And then the publication start, time, and end is when you want that to be made public to passengers. So you can, for example, in the case of roadworks, you'll probably want to give the public advanced notice. So let's say you want that to go out from today's date. Has to be later than, let's say, 11 a.m. And then publication end date is the end of the disruption. So this allows you to publicize that ahead of schedule to give the public fair warning. Or let's say it's a yearly event, so like a marathon that you can pre-populate this months in advance, and then have the publication start date closer to the time of the marathon, for example. And then does this repeat? So is this a daily or weekly reoccurrence? And then also, for example, if it's a roadworks that doesn't fit neatly into a weekly or daily reoccurrence, if it's something that happens on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, overnight, you can add another validity period. So you'll have a validity period for the Monday, one for the Wednesday, and then one for the Friday. And then if it needs to repeat, you can do weekly or daily reoccurrences for those. Save and continue. And then, as mentioned, this is a consequences. So service level would be, basically this describes how the service is impacted by that disruption. So if it's the full service or multiple services are impacted, this is when you would use service level consequence. Network wide would be, for example, the whole network within your area is impacted by, for example, a major weather event that shuts off the whole network. That's when you would use that. Operator wide, specific to operator. Let's say operator, sorry about that. An operator ceases trading and you want to take down all of their services, and you could do that. And then stops is specific stops. So for example, if a roadwork closes, access to a stop. I'm going to start with stops. The most commonly are the stops and services. So those are the two we'll go through in today's session. And as mentioned previously, we can do disruptions for all four modes of transport. So I'm going to do bus for now. If you do know the name of the stop, you can obviously search that up, but we do have the mapping function. So you can search up a street name, for example. And just to mention, this is set to your admin area. So mine's currently set to the West Midlands, but depending on where you are in the country, it pulls in the naptime stops for that admin area. So what you could do if you're not sure where the stop is on the map is draw a polygon, and that will pull through all the stops within that polygon. So you can see it's pulled through all three stops. You can select all stops or click on the individual stop you want, and you can see it's pulled through Princess Street there. And then the consequence description is just explaining what the impact of the disruption is. I'm just going to copy from the description before, but you can add extra information and this will be made visible to the public. And then remove from journey planners. If you click yes, that means that that stop will be completely removed from downstream consumers. So they can't make that stop available to the public. If you click no, that means the public can still technically see the stop on the app, but they'll obviously have the note to say that there's roadworks blocking access to that stop. Delay is an optional field, kind of an estimated time of delay. Disruption severity, again, is a set list. I'm just going to put slight. And then what you can do is either save and continue, and then add like social media post, etc., and then publish, or you can add another consequence. So for each disruption, you can add up to 15 consequences. So for example, if that stop was also, if a tram ran through that street, or I don't think a train would, but for example, if a tram ran through that street, you could add a tram level consequence to say that the tram is also impacted by that stop closing, for example. I'm going to add a service level just to quickly show you what service level disruptions look like. So again, mode is transport bus. Service level pulls through all the services within your admin area. So you can either click the ones you want. Again, if you're not sure what services run through that street, you can search up on the map. And then again, if you draw a polygon on the map, it'll pull through all the stops and services that run through that street. So you can see it's pulled through all the services and the stops. So this is saying that the full services for all of these that run through these stops are impacted. However, if you remove all stops and just select Princess Street, this is now saying that the full services is fine. It's just specifically at Princess Street that these services are impacted because of that road closure. The stop closure, essentially. So it's adding an extra level of granularity to say that the rest of the service is fine. It's just specifically at Princess Street stop, it's impacted. Again, copy from previously, but this is where you would add consequence description. For remove from journey planners, I'm going to say no again. Disruption severity light, and because this is a service level consequence, you decide whether it was just the inbound or outbound of that service that's impacted or both. I'm going to leave it as both for now. And then this is kind of a summary of your disruption so far. You can review and change anything. You can see the consequences, so the stop level consequence and then the service level consequence here. Again, you can obviously edit those, and this is where you would add social media posts. So you would have pre-allocated your social media accounts on your account settings, and then you can add any messaging, choose a file. So if you want an image added, I'm not going to do that for now, but then what you would do is if you're happy with that, then you would publish the disruption. And because it's an upcoming one, it's not currently live, it should appear in the upcoming section. So you can see roadworks on road A is there. The last thing, just to quickly whiz through, is account settings and user management. So account settings, the main thing to focus on is which source of data you can use. So if you want to either use the TNDS or BODS, we do have both of those as data sources. And then just to make sure that your admin area is set to correctly to your admin area, because that pulls through your stops on the mapping function and the services. And then in terms of user management, this is where you would add operators and users. So if you wanted to add an operator as a local authority, you'd add the operator name and NOC, and then that creates that operator account. And then when you're adding a user, this is where you would do that. As mentioned, there's 4 different types of accounts. So an admin has rights to publish for all 4 consequences, and obviously add users. Publisher has the rights to create disruptions for all 4 users as well, all 4 consequences, sorry. Staff has the rights to create disruptions for all 4 consequences, but they do require approval from a higher level account. So this is maybe for someone more junior in your team that requires their information requires review. And then an operator is a more restricted account. So an operator account can only create disruptions for their services or operator-wide consequences. But just to note, an operator account doesn't require approval, so anything they do publicize would go straight to the feed. So it kind of depends what you would want to grant them. And for an operator account, you would have already created the operator account in the step before, and then you would just allocate which operator account you're associating it with. That kind of covers everything. I know that was a very quick demo, but I'll stop there for any questions. Anyone else? No. Okay, the last thing to mention is if you would like access to the pre-prod site, we do. So the pre-prod site is a practice site. It's not technically live, so you can practice using the tool, creating different types of disruptions. And then if you're happy with moving on to the live site, then you can just reach out to us, and then we can move you on to the production site. But if you would like access to the pre-prod site, please just reach out, and we can get you set up.